Hi everybody, in this exercise we're going to be working with using images, and we're going to be using the references from the images section on the W3 schools. So we've worked with images a bit. You can see that there's all sorts of ways to use images. By default, you can set width and height. They're doing the style here. I strongly prefer that you use a style rather than just listing the width and height in the HTML, but my preference is that you do that in the CSS, and we're going to work with that a bit. We'll also work with an image on another server or website, an image as a link, and floating. And we're predominantly working in this class with pings. You can use the animated portable network graphics. I don't specifically address it. We typically use GIF. We will be using the ICO. JPEG ping we use a lot. SVG you can use. I don't particularly cover it. That's a scalable vector graphic, something that would be created by InDesign. And those are good because if you use a scalable vector graphic, it describes the images using math. So if you create a logo and you want it to clear on a business card and a billboard, scalable vector graphics are the way to go. The rest of the graphics are all like bitmap images where you're getting dots of color for each, and they take a lot more information, especially if you're resizing. I've given you a file to download, and I've set it up with a bunch of divs. Now, divs are logical sections to a page. You will add the following tags. We're going to do an ID for each div here. So it would be the ID of background, you'll have an ID for image map, and you're seeing I have, I'm playing with GitHub Copilot. That comes for free with your student GitHub backpack. It's worth playing with. I encourage you to use it. So the pound sign means it's an ID, and IDs can only be used once per page. And so you're going to create an ID in your CSS page for each div that has an ID applied to it on the HTML page. And you identify it as an ID by using that hashtag or number sign in front of it. So these are all the samples that we're going to do. We're actually going to do two backgrounds because we're going to do a background for the whole body. I've set up the default settings for the header and the divs, and they have the same settings. When you use a comma between the div and the header, that means that those get the exact same settings. H1, H2 get the same settings, and then these we're going to add things to. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to test my index.html. And so you can see right now, it's got a partially transparent background on the divs. It doesn't really show up that way. I don't really want that header to have that minimum height. So this is something you can, this is an optional thing that you can do. But you'll notice I want the minimum height, just not for the using images. So those are all the same, but I can still add another div style. So it's just using images. I don't want to be that big. Okay, so let's talk about the code I already have in here. The div in the header, again, this is applying both. It's got a width of 80%, margin of 20px. Now, it's important to note that you actually are only getting a 20px here, not 40. You'd think that it would be 20 top, 20 bottom, but they collapse when you're doing top and bottom ones. So we have 20 pixels between each of the divs here. We've got gold color here, gold border, and we have these set up where we can use them. So this is the setup. In this particular video, I want to introduce how to do the background images. We're going to do one for the body, and then we're going to do a background here. And so when we look at the HTML images, they have a background image option here, and you can repeat and you can cover. You have the attachment, which is fixed, which means it stays in one place. This is actually the exact way I prefer to do this. So you can copy and paste from here. And again, if you're copying and pasting from the W3 Schools site and you're taking less than 10 lines of text, you don't need to cite your source. This is basically your textbook. I expect you to be taking code from here. I'm going to drop this in, and I've given you all sorts of images in here that you can use to start. If you prefer to use your own images, that's fine. But the Aurora Borealis, that's a good background image. So we're going to use that one. Your other option for the background image is the tree image. That's good, but I'm going to use that in the background of a div to show you that you can do a background for a div as well as a background for the whole page. So back on the styles here, instead of this, I'm going to put in // I need to go up a level. I'm going to go to images, and I'm going to choose the Aurora Borealis, and I'm going to save it. And this is going to let you really see, whoever got a typo in there, that's going to let you see that this partially transparent background does let you see through it a bit, but it makes it much easier to read text on the front. So we can do that again for the background image. Where I'm copying and pasting, and Shift Tab will get this back to where it belongs. And so here, again, I'm going to do that // I'm going to go into images, and I'm going to use the tree image. And I'm going to save this, and I'm going to refresh. Now, we may want to play with the different options here because we're not really seeing the full image. So we could, and there's a few ways we can handle this. I can change the minimum height of just that div, and it's more specific, so it's going to override. I'm actually really happy with that. That makes me happy. But we could play with it. And this is the one we'd play with. Instead of cover, we have the option of auto. I'm going to save and refresh. Not in love with it. Not bad, not in love with it. Or we could do contain. And generally, I try them all and see which one I'm happiest with. Contains, all right. I think I like cover the best. So it is just trial and error until you are happy with it. And that's the best thing about code is that you can try, you can stop, you can try again. So get those two background images set up, and then we're going to work on floats in our next exercise.